Don't you have to go somewhere? Don't you I'll make you play the he's got a much more limited time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. It's interesting.
So I guess he's driving now, I guess?
Yeah. Yep.
I guess probably the best way to go right now, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's able to work remote, so he's got to bring a bunch of monitors down. He works in pre-sale or sales, so he's got to bring a bunch of monitors down and bring a bunch of stuff with him. So.
It's easier that way.
Hey there, how you doing? So, and they're going. You guys are Cambridge, I see.
My son, he's a rising sophomore. And I've got a rising eighth grader and a couple of them.
Good to see you too.
And they're involved in athletics.
Barely. Boys football and boys baseball.
They'll have to type their
So we've been
question
over,
in chat.
we're at the Milton High School field practicing baseball this afternoon. They were giving me a hard time about, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
They're just able, if they join.
At least they can.
It's hard to breathe with this.
You know, it's crazy. We had his first baseball tournament was last week. And it was like none of this ever
Right, but they'll be.
Everybody's
We were
good?
out at like, that facility in Cartersville.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, you can see it
all
around
around and the
weeks now.
signage and everything.
Yeah. Getting back into
Like,
it.
I'm not,
If we
you don't
have
need to
no
wear a mask if you're not, don't want to, but
Mm-hmm.
like, at least let's try to observe
Yep.
some sense.
That's good.
Because it's still out there.
Because
You'll be in the concession line and they turn around, the person's right there.
Yeah.
All the seats were open, all the kids in the dugout, I'm like,
So,
Yeah, it's a little too
so I
close
mean,
together.
yeah, so he's got 20 kids on his team, they're on the dugout throwing the ball, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
So we could hear and see
You
her.
know, they're
Right.
healthy kids.
And then she
But-
could see me.
So I'm like, this might be a good time to get it.
It was through the.
yeah,
Actually, probably better, right?
Yeah.
that's like I said, I mean, 'cause there's a, we can't hear Greg on Facebook Live. So every layer that you put of additional things makes it more and more confusing.
Well, yes. From, you know, because I know it's still.
Yeah, I meant to follow up and say, what you did.
So as long as we wash our hands and keep distance.
And I was like, I would like to hurry the
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, I was gonna do it yesterday.
To like, like people under 30 is 0.007.
Yeah, I mean,
They don't necessarily know that. I don't want that death rate to go down because they need, if we need to have the drama and the sensation.
We can probably get around it, but I wasn't sure that.
Well, if it does this way
so
after
that's why.
the protests and the rally, then we'll know. They've been lying to us the whole time.
You're going to get even more angry because the effect is still going in the business world.
Absolutely.
I don't want people to die, but it's a struggle. The opposition satisfied with the plan?
How are you? Good. How about you?
For social distancing, or should we? I don't know.
I thought we were supposed to all wear them, but I don't know.
Okay, okay.
It's gonna be hard to talk with it, but yeah, let's see.
I like that.
You don't have a printed agenda, do you? Oh,
All the agendas and cards are. Well, we have everybody here. I'm so impressed.
You missed it.
You guys just want to get out of the house, right?
That's what it took.
yeah, Parker too.
Thrown out in your scenario.
Your wives are like, go.
It was either this or hand out football equipment.
Oh,
I'll be here.
yeah.
Well, it's 6 o'clock. Why don't we start? And the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone who is here and all of those who are joining us virtually this evening. For those of you who are on Zoom or joining virtually, I'd like to give you some instructions as to how you might participate, so if you so choose. Everyone is, if you would like to make a comment during the public hearing, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand.
Just a second, I apologize. We're having some audio difficulties, so there won't be any audio chat available on Zoom tonight.
Okay.
But they can raise their hand to chat, and Teresa can take any questions over the Zoom chat feature at this time. But otherwise, the audio, they can hear what's going on, but they can't participate in the audio discussion.
We also typically have the phone linkage. Is that linkage available as well this evening?
The phone, no, it's not.
No, that's not available either.
No.
Okay.
Could you give a clear statement of what anyone that wants to participate needs to do? I didn't quite follow, but if you can make a statement to the public what they need to do tonight.
So we're getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah.
There was just some work done on the system yesterday, so we're still working on
So I think that's what the chair was doing.
Right, but he was saying some part of it's not
so
working.
revising it
Yes,
instead
this
of being
won't
able to
work this
speaking. David was saying it would only be through chat questions that we can address if they send a chat.
They'll
through.
send it in and I will read it.
Right.
Okay. Now, can you give those who may be listening instructions on how to do that? To use that chat feature, that is.
So depending on how they're logged in, either on a computer, there should be a raise hand feature
Okay.
at the bottom of the screen. They will have that available if they're calling in. So just at the bottom of the screen and raise hand. Should, I think it's star 6 or star 9.
Okay, that would be star 9 and star 6 would be enable them to speak. So it would be just the star 9.
I apologize, and that's not a possibility at this time.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
That was important so that people online know how to communicate with us. So it's just that that one click that will allow them to enter the chat mode, correct?
And speak to Teresa.
Okay.
Chat with Teresa, and their comments can be made public.
All right. Thank you very much.
So I'm not. So they're going to raise their hand by clicking the button, and then go into chat to ask questions. Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear that they will need to enter chat to ask questions as opposed to speaking.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully that's.
Hopefully. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the clarification there.
Is there a way that Teresa could maybe put just a statement so if somebody comes in after we start that they would know that? Can she put like a chat?
I'll put it in chat.
Okay.
now.
So if they join after we start, then they'll know.
And can Teresa direct message or chat
Right, yeah, so
to
she's
someone
putting
direct?
it on
If
the
someone
chat.
raises their hand,
Yeah.
she can ask
Right,
them.
but I'm
questions.
just saying pre that when they get on, they know that if they have to do it a certain way. So, yeah. Okay, cool.
We didn't have the same guy that did the Georgia election equipment do our audio.
Oh, well.
All right.
We're trying.
Let's continue with our call to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am the chair. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton's mayor and the City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications. comprehensive land use plan, and the plan map, and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. At this moment, I'd like to introduce the members of the Planning Commission. To my left is Zach Middlebrook, Kurt Nolte, Sumit Shah, Fred Edwards, John Jacobus, and Marty Block. Petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. This evening we have one posted item, as I'm sure you're aware. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures I'd like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks, provided time remains within their allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action has made within the 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official, which will consider the application, it shall be the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised and notices have been mailed to property owners affected by this zoning as required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton's mayor and City Council for final disposition in approximately 5 weeks or the first Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstrations of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off all of your cell phones, place them on silent, or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you would expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with the Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for posting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delay, and there are no exceptions. For all general comment, the time will be limited to 2 minutes per person, not to exceed 14 minutes. And that concludes our call to order. Robin, are there any requests for public comment?
No general public comment, no.
All right. Then we will dispense with that and move on to the action minutes. The action minutes have been provided in our package. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, may I hear a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 26, 2020 Planning Commission action minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, raise your hand. It's passed unanimously. All right.
You can go ahead and read the item. I typically read
Yes,
the
here we
item,
are.
So.
We have one item this evening. It is U-20-01, VC-20-01, 12900 Arnold Mill Road by Ebenezer United Methodist Church for a use permit to construct a 23,000 square foot activity center on the existing church property for a total of 28,088 square feet on 6.61 acres. To request a two-part concurrent variance to 1, reduce the required parking, and 4, allow parking in front of the building. The applicant no longer requires parts 2 and 3 of the concurrent variances based on a revised site plan submitted March 16, 2020. Would staff care to make its presentation now?
Yes, we will. I will. Well, welcome back. Missed everybody for the last 3 months. I'm glad everybody's healthy and here. So I'm glad that we're back together and continuing on with the city's business. This item had been, just to refresh your memory, you all deferred this at the February meeting to the March meeting to allow the applicants to be able to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and to come up with a revised site plan. So that's what's happened since that time. So as a review, they're requesting a use permit for a church. They're requesting for a 23,000 square foot activity center. Currently, the church contains 5,088 square feet of structures on 6.61 acres. And as stated before, there's a two-part concurrent variance. The applicant obviously is Ebenezer United Methodist Church. Just for some history, the last use permit was issued in 1993 by the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, approved for an addition for a total of 5,000 square feet on 4.14 acres. So since that time, they've acquired an additional 2.47, and therefore there was a need to update the use permit. So anytime we expand land or square footage, and in this case both, a new use permit is required, and it is currently zoned AG1. Okay, it worked before. Okay. So the initial site plan submitted required the 2 additional concurrent variances, as I said previously, based on the fact that it was adjacent to a residential use on the northern side of the property. The church and city staff met, and a revised site plan was submitted to move the activity center to comply with the setbacks and buffers. Location is based in part because of a large oak was in decline and because was a possible hazard and needed to be removed. And since that time, the church had an independent arborist evaluate the tree, as well as our city arborist. They requested a tree removal permit, and she was in agreement. And since that time, that oak has been removed that was in the center of the property. This is a location map, obviously, at Arnold Mill, the corner of Arnold Mill and Cox Road, the northwest corner. Okay, this is zoning. It's pretty vanilla, haha, you know. It's all pretty much AG1. Across the street is the city of Roswell, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about what is in the city of Roswell as we go along. This is the revised site plan. As you can see, the activity center has been moved away from the northern portion of the property, and it meets the regulated setbacks and a undisturbed 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback. They also have their stream buffer along the northwest corner, and then their detention area is just south of there, below it, and then the new parking is parallel to Cox Road in two different areas. So that's basically the site plan. They're proposing 144 parking spaces, and we'll discuss that during the concurrent variance section. Okay? Next. Okay, as I think in the report, the city architects worked closely with the church's architect, and this is the latest elevations based upon the new location and working with the topography. So this is elevations looking west and north. And then the next slide will show the elevations looking east and south. And I just want to remind everyone that any non-residential building in the rural Milton overlay district would have to have review to meet the architectural requirements and height of the rural Milton overlay, and then ultimately be approved by the City of Milton Design Review Board. So just we'd like you to see the direction they're going into, but ultimately it's based upon compliance with the ordinance and the Design Review Board. So next. And along with the repositioning of the building, the church thought it was a great idea to include a pavilion, an outside pavilion. This, as many of you know, is from Birmingham United Methodist Church. It's a really great example of an outdoor space that can be utilized for the pavilion. Not all the brick there, but the pavilion itself. Okay. So in regards to public participation, there were 2 CZIM meetings. The first one was in December. We had, I believe there were, I think there were 4 or 5 attendees. And most of the attendees were from Idris Walk subdivision, which is on the south side of Cox Road to the southwest. And they were concerned with lighting and traffic produced by the additional parking lot and building. At that time, in December, the owner-operator of Georgia Golf Center also came to give his concern about he had a single-family house that faces Arnold Mill and is being used as a residence. So therefore, we had to go back and ask for additional variances for that situation at the time. And then everyone expressed concern over the congested intersection at Cox and Arnold Mill, as well as Cox and Idris Roads, which is located in the city of Roswell. Next. Okay, then we had a second meeting based upon adding the 2 concurrent variances, and there was no one that came to that. Well, And there was no one that came to that one, so. And then it went to the Design Review Board on February 4th, and their comments were supporting the use permit to work on architecture if approved and would like to see the paint color if approved, which they would have jurisdiction over that once the building architecture went to them, as well as they supported the reduction requests of the parking. Then each applicant is required to submit a public participation report based upon meetings that they hold on their own, and in which the church held 2 of them, one in December and one in February. At the first meeting, there were 4 attendees. Issues, again, included the parking lot lighting concerns and traffic at Arnold Mill and Cox Road intersection. So, next slide. Yep. Okay. We're going to go into the use permit considerations for a church, and basically the existing church and the requested expansion is located within the AEE land use category of the City of Milton Comprehensive Plan update map. And a church or place of worship is an allowed use if a use permit is approved by the mayor and city council. Therefore, the proposed is consistent with the current comprehensive land use plan. So next. So here we have a map and a grid that speaks to the different uses around the site. Obviously, there's the Georgia Golf driving range to the north, northwest. It's under 1. There's number 2 is scattered single-family residences all to the east, as well as kind of intertwined, a couple of them going up Arnold Mill Road on the west side. Ebenezer Cemetery is number 3 to the south. And then one of our latest acquisitions, the City of Milton Soccer Complex, directly to the south as well, southeast. And then the Porter School, which is directly south, and also Etris Walk subdivision within the city of Roswell. So anything with the orangey, darker color is the jurisdiction of Roswell. And further to the west is Union Primitive Baptist Church, and a few years ago they actually had requested an expansion of their church as well. And then finally, number 8, there's a single-family residence directly to the west of the church, and that is also why there is a 75-foot undisturbed buffer adjacent to that residential use. So based upon the various rural AG1, single-family, as well as institutional uses such as the soccer fields, a private school, another church, and the golf course, the use is compatible with the land uses and zoning in the vicinity. Okay. Number 3, the proposed use currently violates regulations governing land development, but if the requested use permit and associated concurrent variances are approved, it would not violate local, state, and federal statutes, ordinances, or regulations governing land development. Number 4, there will be minimal effect on church or associated activity center, on traffic flow, vehicular and pedestrian along Arnold Mill Road. Just for your information, the city transportation engineer did not require a traffic study or traffic memo, as well as there, at this point in time, not indicated any major improvements along Cox Road, other than want to make a note, and I think I do later on, that one of the driveways will be closed, so it'll be reduced to 2 driveways onto Cox Road. So we get into location and number of parking spaces, the existing parking in front of existing building and proposed parking along Cox Road in front of proposed building. Staff recommending approval of the concurrent variance for the location based on the fact that a 15-foot landscape strip planted to buffer standards can be planted along Cox Road. This is permitted per the overlay district to help camouflage parking from the road. And the use permit requires 220 spaces based on 1 space per 35 square feet in the largest assembly area, which was determined to be 7,700 square feet. And if you do the math, it comes out to be 220. And the applicant has requested to reduce it to 144, with 27 of those spaces already existing. Also, as a note, the church has an agreement with the Porter School that if there's any requirement for overflow parking, that they can utilize their parking across the street as well. So staff is recommending approval of this concurrent variance to reduce the number to 144 spaces. The amount and location of open space. The site contains 6.61 acres, and there's a stream located on the northwestern portion, and they're providing a 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setbacks adjacent to the west and northern property lines. And therefore, it provides a fair amount of open space and non-developable. Go back one. Protective screening, again, as mentioned, there's an undisturbed buffer, 75-foot and 10-foot improvement setback adjacent to the northern and the western property lines, which is required, and then the 15-foot landscape strip along Cox to buffer standards, and then an additional 10-foot landscape strip along the frontages along Arnold Mill Road, where there's no parking viewed from the right-of-way. And then to the next one, to 8, hours and manner of operation. In your packet, you saw a whole page full of various activities that are either on a quarterly basis or yearly, as well as their weekly and monthly. So there's a lot going on, but in general, after analyzing the different activities that occur, staff is recommending the hours of Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Okay. Outdoor lighting, the applicant has not indicated any additional lighting on the site. If lighting is proposed, it must comply with the night sky ordinance. And lastly, ingress and egress to the property. The site plan indicates there are 3 curb cuts, of which 1 will be closed on Cox. Okay, and then the next one. So also, the site plan meets all the development standards for the actual use permit for a church. So we don't need to discuss in detail what those standards are. But based on those facts, the use permit considerations and their conclusions, and the request meets the development standards, staff recommends approval conditional of U20-01 for a church and associated activity center. And in regards to the site plan in general, as I said, there's 2 concurrent variances, one for parking and one for the rural Milton overlay district that speaks to parking in front of a building. And each variance has considerations. These 4 considerations were evaluated for each of the 2 variances. And next one. And staff recommends approval conditional for both requests. Below are the review of each of the requests. Part 1, staff recommends approval conditional to reduce the number of parking spaces from 220 to 144, based on the fact of having alternative parking as well as providing screening along Cox Road to help ameliorate the visual cars being parked. And then Part 4, to allow parking in front of the building based on the limited area to place required parking, and the applicant will be installing the landscape strip planted to buffer standards. Staff recommends approval conditional. So this is both to cover the existing parking in front of the sanctuary at the corner, as well as any new parking, which will be between the right-of-way and the new building. And in conclusion, if approved with the recommended conditions, the proposed church and associated activity center is consistent with the City of Milton Comprehensive Land Use Plan update. Therefore, staff recommends approval conditional of U-2001, as well as recommends VC 2001 parts 1 and 4 to be approved conditional. So these are the recommended conditions. You want to go back one, please? Thank you. So to the owner's agreement to restrict the use of the subject property as follows: assembly building with a maximum of 5,088 square feet and a 23,000 square foot activity center for a total of 2,888, located on 6.61 acres. Also including the accessory structures to include a pavilion with outdoor fireplace. And the next one. So this is a condition based on compliance with the revised site plan dated, submitted on March 16th. I won't go through the whole thing. Go to the next one. And then another condition regarding days and hours of operation, which reflects what was discussed during the presentation. Next. And then the applicant has indicated that that they're willing to construct the new parking areas with porous grass pavers or crushed gravel on the southwest parking area. And then 4, this is basically a general condition that covers any kind of site development subject to the Department of Public Works and Georgia Department of Transportation. And the next one is another general condition that covers stormwater management. So just to make you feel like, we have a lot of codes, and so there's not really a need to be redundant and repeat the requirements that are already set forth in our city code that addresses these last 2 items. So you think, oh, wow, that's hardly anything. But we already have it pretty well, it's pretty well dealt with through our codes. And now to the next one, we're going to deal with the concurrent variances. So for y'all who've been here for a while, this is a little different than what you've seen when I've presented concurrent variances. What I've found out is that we need to separate the concurrent variances away from the conditions of zoning. So ultimately, when and if the council approves, it's a separate section because variances expire after 36 months. So the use permit itself, they get the right to have their square footage and the use. That stays perpetually with the property, but concurrent variances expire after 36 months if they are not utilized, correct? And so
That was a condition I was looking for.
What's that?
Not automatically, if they don't.
If they're not, I mean, they could start the land disturbance permit, and that would give them the right to use it if they started on month 36 or something. So it's something new for y'all who've been on the council. On the planning commission for a while. So I just want to explain that that we're separating them away from the actual conditions of zoning. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. And do we have any other people that? No. So we have the applicant and their architect here to be able to speak to you, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff at this point? Well, then we're ready for our applicant.
Okay, so Mr. Reggie Elkins. Or I'm sorry, were there any questions? Okay.
On the recommended conditions on our paper that we have on page 28, it talked about the deliveries. but you don't mention those in the presentation. It says days and hours of operation, including deliveries,
Right.
and I have a problem with that. So, but you
Yeah,
didn't
so I
say-
can make it consistent with the, yeah, I mean, it would including,
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
that's
okay.
fine.
Well, I have to ask. them.
that's just a generic, because we have to cover it in case, you know,
Oh,
they don't
all
want
right,
their, something delivered at
Well,
6
based
a.m.
based on that, it does bring up a problem for me, but I'll take it up with the applicant,
Okay,
including deliveries up till 10 p.m.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay. In the write-up, it says days and hours of operations, including deliveries.
Okay,
Then you have Mondays through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I understand the way that's written, that they could be getting delivery at 9:45 p.m.
right, that's correct. So if that's something that you all want
Yes,
to
that's what,
see
okay.
to
I
amend.
didn't, but that was not in your presentation.
Correct.
So I wanted to make sure which one was correct. So it does include delivery.
Yeah, the recommendations did include it, so,
Okay.
but if that's not something that you see needs to be amended, you can make a recommendation
Okay.
of that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I think we're ready
So,
for the
Mr.
applicant.
Elkins, you can go up to this dais here.
Welcome. Could you please,
4621 Villa Chase Drive, Northeast Marietta, Georgia, 30068. I'm the architect with RNC Concepts for the church. As I'm sure you guys know, there's a rich history with Ebenezer within the Milton community. And as I look around the room, I don't think any of us were around when it first started in 1863 or 1853. But the goal that the church gave us was to make sure we keep the character of the church and of Milton in the design. And because of that, in your package, you can see that the activity center is designed similar to a barn. And it's also designed, and the intent is to use it for not only church activities, but for a place for community activities as well, such as weddings and barbecues and funerals and that type of thing as well. So really, Robin covered everything from a technical standpoint. I just wanted to give a little bit of history as to what the intent of the church is, to keep it within the character of a horse farm and farmland, if you will, with that barn look in the city of Milton. So any questions for me?
I mean, I had a question, you didn't address it, but I had a question just in general about the number of parking spaces and how you guys came up with 144 instead of the number that was calculated based on the city code.
Well, actually, working with the city, we came in with one of our first examples was what's required, the 222, which most of the property was parking. And the goal was to reduce the parking as much as possible because of the use of the building, with it not being a full-time use, only special occasions, because the city's trying to not have so much land in parking lots. And so between us and the city, we worked with getting it down to that 144 based on what the church is planning for the activities. And what we looked at and what they plan is there's probably 3 or 4 major activities like Easter, Christmas, that might push it to that 144. But other than that, it'll be below the 144. So that was kind of a max for the use of the building as an activity center.
And I know in the packet, there's kind of that schedule of what they're, saying that these are going to be the activities during the week or whatever. But like, again, I think some of the idea behind the pavilion is also for, like you said, weddings and maybe some other events. So have you guys thought about, is there going to be potentially weddings going on at the same time that there may be a church service on Sunday?
I can't really answer that, but I doubt it.
Okay. Does anybody
No.
else?
It said
Gene
that-
is
it said
head of
that
the
they
committee
would-
for the church.
It
Yeah,
it
'cause
said that
I'm-
they wouldn't have activities going on at the same time
Yeah.
in here somewhere.
And I know, and again, when it says activities, but again, it may be discussing those activities that are on that schedule. But if you're talking about the purpose of this also being for something outside of the normal church activities, such as weddings or funerals or other outside events, and again, I don't know if that's related to just anybody with the church or anybody else, but I wanted to make sure that if you're going to have two large events going on at the same time, you've got enough parking to cover both of those events.
It would not be the case.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then now, does the church actually have a formal agreement with whoever across the street?
Yes.
There's an actual formal agreement in place that they can use the parking at any time that they needed to?
Correct.
Okay. And then in terms of like the 15-foot that was going to be off of Cox or Arnold Mill, that was going to, what's going to be there in that buffer?
It'll be a landscape buffer that our landscape architect will, use landscaping for that buffer. And again, we'll work with the city architect and so forth as to what the plantings will be.
Okay.
It'll be a mixture of low and high type of landscaping.
Yeah, so we do have a certain requirements. That's why it's called planted to buffer standard. So it won't just be low bushes, but we have a certain standard that's required to meet that 15-foot buffer standard. So
is it going to be high enough that you can't really see the cars?
I mean, eventually, cars are only, initially they're probably going to see it a little bit, but the intent is after a year or two, you're not going to see the cars. So it gives opportunity to visually become a barrier.
Plus, that parking lot would be 18 inches to 24 inches below Cox Road, so it's low versus, higher than Cox Road. So that'll help also.
So can I make a suggestion is that if Mr. Elkins is finished with the presentation, then we close the public hearing and then you can start asking questions. And you can always bring him back up to ask questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sumit, did you have another question?
One other question I had, Robin, was I know during your presentation you had said that they had acquired some acreage since 1993.
Yeah.
And so right now, are they doing anything with that acreage?
Yes. that's so they acquired a piece of property to the west, which is basically the stream and the buffer and a part of the parking lot. So there was, a parcel to the west, and then there was like the triangle to the north. It used to be a triangle that they purchased on the north side. So it's just allowing them to use it for buffer, and it looks like there's some septic in that area on the northern part. So yeah.
Okay. So did they have to have did they needed to have any use permit in place now since they've acquired that acreage, regardless of the whole new structure that they want to build?
Right. If they weren't going to be, technically, if they weren't going to be improving the property at all, we would have asked them to come in to expand their use permit because that's a part of their church property. So, yeah.
So how long ago was that purchased?
How long ago was...
Been like 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Last two.
We started the design process.
You want to come up here? Yeah, you come up.
Yeah, when we initially started the design process, actually 5 years ago, one of the first issues we had was parking and the amount of land. So that's when they started acquiring the property to try and get enough land to deal with the parking. And then after that's when we started meeting with the city staff about the parking and so forth. So we had started the preliminary conceptual design, prior to meeting with the city staff. And I told them that they were going to need to acquire additional land, and that's been within the last 2 to 3 years.
While you're up there, I just have on the print, it shows into the parking lot, it shows a frame house. Has that been torn down, or?
It has not yet, but it would be torn down.
It would be torn down.
As part of the project, yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that wasn't the house that the golf course.
No.
Okay. That's all I have for him.
No, so Robin, so I guess the question I'm getting to with the whole acreage part, if they've owned this for 3 years, so are they able to use that right now if there's not a use permit for it? While this process is going on.
I mean, technically, the area that the church building is on and the current parking is on the property that they originally had.
Right.
So, I mean, I say that, with obviously they've been planning this for a long time and it takes time to acquire land. So, I mean, if they started building or having activities on the new property, it probably would send code enforcement out. But I think, it's a give and take of their process of acquiring land. But currently their activities are on the property that has the use permit.
Okay. So, but basically, hypothetically, if this goes through and council approves this, we don't need to address that now. This will be it'll be addressed. That other acreage that they bought will be addressed now that they're going to be utilizing that other acreage for
right.
These
That's why
things.
where they're coming forward. Right. Correct.
Yeah. No. I mean, I get that, but I just want to make sure that encompasses that because, again,
it does.
In my mind, if they bought this land a few years ago, they don't have a use permit to use that right now, technically speaking. They can't use it, I don't think, unless they were given the use permit for that additional acreage, right?
I mean, technically, I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
But at this point, they're not utilizing it other than holding the lands. So, yes. And that's the intent is, for them to proceed. So let's say if for some reason they decide, in 6 months they, because of whatever reason, they can't build, the larger 23,000 square foot building, but we've covered them, for expanding the land. So, I mean, either way, I think it covers them whether they ever actually build it or not. The new use permit has expanded the legal description to what they own at this time.
So then that brings me to another question. So if let's just say this doesn't go through, and or it goes through and they don't build, are we still? Is this by us doing this and them getting a use permit? They can only get a use permit, then they can only use that land. If they're not granted a use permit, or they're granted a use permit, does that include the fact that they may not build, and they can still then use that other additional acreage, or they have to build?
They don't have to build it. I mean.
Okay. They don't have to?
No.
Okay. But as long as we grant them the use permit?
Right. It brings in all of their land into compliance. So, I mean, I know they're not utilizing it for a building or parking right now, but let's say for some reason they can't build it right away, then that's okay too. That's why we were saying that the concurrent variances expire in 36 months because, hey, let's think, well, maybe in 5 years they decide, to reposition the building or make it smaller or do whatever, then they would have to come back for what's called a zoning modification and ask for those variances again or whatever variances they needed because in 5 years it may not be the same situation. I mean, that's a lot of what ifs, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm getting at, does anything else need to be encompassed in this to just grant them a use permit for that additional acreage, whether or not they go forward and build something in 36 months?
I guess you could do it. I mean,
because if they don't build in 36 months, I understand those concurrent variances hypothetically would expire, but at least then at that point, we're going ahead and taking care of something that should have been done a while ago and not getting them the use permit for this additional 2.0 acres that they purchased, that they have, that they're utilizing somehow. I mean, people, they're still using it. I mean, it's theirs.
I mean, it's physically there, but I guess worst case scenario, if there was just everybody here with pitchforks and everything and saying they oppose the activity center, then I think the least that that needs to be done is to approve the use permit for the existing structures.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I just want to make sure that
5,066.
the city has thought about this and we understand, and we're at least covering them hypothetically for what they already have. Because they're granted this, but again, they decide for whatever reason they don't want to build this in 36 months, then I don't want them to be back at square one where
Right, they're not.
they don't even have the legal use to use that other 2.0 acres under this use
Plan,
permit.
right? It's not 30. The 36 months is the variance. So if we approve the use, they could decide they want to build in 7 years. Then
Right.
they would have to come back for the variance, but the use goes with the land.
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're covering that. The use is we're covering that in this, whether or not they build it or not.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I separated the existing use of 5,066 or whatever it is, and then had another section that talked about the new activity center.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff or for the applicant?
Just that point on the deliveries, I feel that.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Fred.
On the deliveries,
Okay.
that we separate that out and
That's fine.
change the delivery time to whatever they feel would be acceptable, but not 10 o'clock at night.
Right, yeah.
As it says
That's a good
here.
point.
And then in terms of the parking spaces, so how did you guys come up with just 144? Is that, I mean, the additional 117, I guess, that they got to build or something? They already have 27, and there's 117 more now?
So I think, as Mr. Elkins had indicated, and the response was that it was based upon, in any situation, we try to reduce the number and intensity of variances requested. And I think a lot of times with parking, in this situation, they reduced it to the point where they could meet the development regulations, and in this case, the 75-foot undisturbed buffer and 10-foot improvement setback on the west side, because they could have added some more, but then they would have had to ask for a concurrent variance to reduce that buffer. When they did their analysis, the church did, they look at how many people attend on Sunday mornings, and even if they had a second, let's say right at 12 o'clock, they had a potluck over in the activity center, they did do some analysis of what would be the most that parking that they would need at any one time. And then Mr. Elkins also indicated, okay, there could be that 2 or 3 times a year, Christmas, Easter, that they may need to utilize that overflow parking across the street at the Porter School. So I think it was a combination of trying to make the site plan work with the least amount of concurrent variances, as well as for them analyzing what were their needs. So.
Any other questions? Are there any public questions?
No. Nobody online.
All right. Well, then, I think we should move forward with a motion. I believe there is at least one clarification from Fred.
Well, I'll go back to that again. I don't want to keep harping on it, but I think the church needs to know if we cut, which I'm proposing on the recommended condition that addendum to it, and separate the deliveries. But then I'm thinking, if they're having a wedding there on Sunday or Saturday, and they've got to deliver flowers or a funeral, so forth, then that might be a problem if my addendum, which I was saying 8 to 5 p.m. for deliveries and no deliveries on Sunday. But
So maybe it's on the evening end to possibly say like 5 o'clock in the evening. I mean, you're probably not going to have deliveries past 5 o'clock.
You could have deliveries for a wedding or something. I would say the latest would be 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
I think that'd be fine, don't you think, Fred? 8 o'clock?
Eight
I mean, if it was
o'clock,
a grocery
that's
store,
fine.
I would say I would agree with you on that.
right,
But I wouldn't think, I'm assuming whoever's delivering is probably going to be in like at most an Amazon type van, or a catering car
Catering,
or something like
right,
that.
right.
I wouldn't think it would be.
no,
really
you're
big.
not going to have a big,
Yeah, really like a big truck beeping, backing up, and all that.
right.
I mean, I think if y'all are good with 8 o'clock for deliveries, I mean, I think that kind of
Okay.
does that satisfy you a little
That's
bit?
fine, yes.
So it would be deliveries 8 a.m. through 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday, or whatever, Saturday, whatever you do, Sunday through a Saturday.
Well, I think you have to leave Sunday in.
I'm sorry, what?
I think we would have to leave Sunday in.
No, that's what I meant, 7 days a week,
Right,
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
for deliveries.
Yeah.
I believe Kurt has a question.
Yeah, in your presentation, you said that they are, reducing all the curb cuts and moving that back away from the intersection, correct?
Correct.
And is that what's shown on these drawings? Is that the?
They show all three existing, but I believe the transportation engineer is going to ask them to close one of them. So it'll probably be the one closest to Arnold Mill.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think that'll help because that's a bad corner anyway. The other question I have when it comes to parking too, and I don't, the city of Milton owns land right across the street also. Is there any possibility that could be used for overflow parking?
So that would have to be an agreement between the two of them, and we're not ready yet. Obviously, that's a possibility, but I think the Porter School would probably be sufficient enough, but if they find out they need more parking for once a year, then they can come to the city and ask for some sort of agreement.
Right, and that's why I think, what is the occupancy of the buildings? Because I know the 225 is based upon code, based upon square footage. Is there an actual occupancy of the building?
Of the new building?
Yes.
Yeah, it's around 500.
Okay. Okay. And I guess too, if you do throw weddings into this, like we discussed, I think that I don't know if the 10 o'clock is appropriate on Saturday for a wedding. I don't know of any weddings that are done by 10 o'clock. So I don't know if that needs to be amended if you want to look at that. But the other thing is that I could see giving them more parking headache than just, Christmas or Easter or some of those. I think that, that puts more pressure on the parking. If we've got 500 people there, we've got 140 some odd spots, plus the 25 over at the Porter School. So those would just be my questions or comments.
Yeah, before we get to a motion, I have a couple of questions for Mr. Elkins as well. So it's a 23,000 square foot building that you are proposing to build, of which 7,700 is going to be an activity area.
The assembly area.
And it's 2 stories. There's a basement level and a main level.
Correct.
What else is going to be in that facility?
Classrooms and a kitchen.
Classrooms, kitchen, no gym?
No.
So you had also mentioned, and somewhere in there, that it says that there's a 4,920 square foot sanctuary. It's going to be a new sanctuary in the building? The existing one, that's the 5,000
Right.
old building. Okay. So you guys need a kitchen. You do a lot of eating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fellowship. Right? How many people will the 7,700 square feet area seat?
It'll be just under 500.
That's the 500.
Like-
That's just
right.
just there. That's as many as you'd have in that building at any time.
That's max, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right at 500 at one point, and we reduced it, so it's around 450.
Okay. So it also mentioned in there concerts. What kind of concerts do you think are being planned for that?
If there was like a church band or something like that,
small Christian type
Right.
music. And those would all be indoor? You do any outdoor concerts?
It's designed so that it could be indoor and flow to the exterior. You know, the rendering that you see, you've got low roofs on each side, and there are doors you can overflow into that covered area, if you will. But there's an amphitheater between the activity center and the pavilion as planned, just a sloped yard, if you will, and because of the grade, steps that you can sit on, so they could do like an outside sermon or something like that.
And that would all be within the same hours of operation and
Right.
stuff. So we had a little issue with a music venue recently. You're pretty close to residences there. And is any of this amplified? Is all acoustical?
Interior it is, yes.
It also mentioned that there is an outside Easter service. Is that in that amphitheater area?
Right.
Okay, so you don't get a big attendance for that.
It's, Gene, what do you average from a Easter egg?
Sunrise, and there's usually about 50 people there.
Okay.
50 today.
Okay. That's mine.
okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we approve concurrent variance. How do you want to do it, one at a time? Or do you just do it both? Sorry.
Well, you can do it all at once, but if you want to approve the special or the use permit with concurrent variances and the following conditions, that would be fine.
Perfect. I make a motion, we approve the use permit with concurrent conditions 1 and 4,
Just
and
be clear,
staff conditions.
just to be clear, concurrent variances.
Concurrent variances
And then-
with conditions.
Okay. I know there was discussion of conditions related to the deliveries, and that separated them out. If you wanted
Yeah.
staff, if you wanted them as written by staff, that's fine. I know there was other discussion.
With conditions, with delivery hours modified as agreed upon with commission and the church of 8 p.m. cap.
So 8 a.m. to
8 p.m.
Monday through Sunday, whatever.
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Is that good?
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Bring it to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. Thank you very much, Zach. Are there any other matters?
No, I think the next meeting, we will have text amendments in regards to temporary fireworks stands, so. Exciting subject, so.
And you mentioned our day is going to be changing as well?
The days?
I thought you said
Oh, that
to me
was for
earlier.
the city council, so.
Council, okay.
And previously, the public hearing for city council usually was on the third Monday of meeting, but we're adding a couple weeks, so it's now on the first. So this item will be heard in the city council on the first meeting in August, so.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, if I could hear a motion for...
July, August,
Say
yeah.
anything about
Okay.
Well,
No. So may I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
It's unanimous.